Welcome back to the Zeitcast, where we talk about theology and culture, spirituality and culture. I'm here today.
NBA.
The NBA?
Politics.
Politics, whatever. The and is very big here. The and is kind of
The
the
and
thing.
is very big here.
So this isn't something I just say, Carlos. I hope that you know that no more when we get to see each other. You are truly one of my all-time favorite humans. I hope that you know that.
I do.
I want to get a great
Thank
photo
you.
today. I want
I
to
know
John the
every
Beloved,
question
like
of it.
head on the bosom. You make me feel so like I can be my full self. It's like someone understands me, someone knows me. Like it's that kind of like, I feel like we've always had that sort of like soul recognition kind of thing.
The first time I met you, I felt, well, number one, you're taller than me. As a Puerto Rican, I am tall.
You are.
I feel like
yep.
I feel like you feel in the U.S.
Yeah.
I feel like that in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And so, why can't just male friends
Yeah,
that
that's
love
right.
each other
Just
can?
be comfortable with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nicole and
Like
Malika, the men of God are talking.
The men of God.
We are, by the way, in Malika's backyard, which is lovely. That was obviously very silly.
Great.
Y'all
pink.
feel free to jump in wherever.
Great pink. Where it's.
Oh, no, we started. When you hear me say, welcome to the Zeitcast. I don't even know if I said my guest is Carlos Rodriguez. I don't even know if I made it that far.
We didn't.
The founder of the Happy Givers
Yeah.
NGO.
Yeah.
Also incredible author, speaker. You know, the true story, one of my favorite things, because that's like stuff you could do for your friends is stuff matters. Being able to write the foreword for Drop the Stones is like one of my favorite professional things I've got to do, because it meant that much to be included on a project of yours.
That's really nice. And then we go back to Drop the Stones, or we go back to how to survive a shipwreck, and then we've moved on from so
Yeah.
many of those things that we've
Yeah.
written and we believed in those times,
Yes.
and that were valid to both of us in
Yeah.
those times, and that we believe in it at that time. But so it's like, I love that we get to keep growing with each other.
I know. Yes.
And that we keep being
yes.
different with
Yeah.
each other,
Yeah.
and that's a lovely thing.
Through these phases, which to what we talked about right before we started, that's an amazing segue to think about it this way.
Yeah.
That when we first became friends,
Yeah.
that where we were and where he'd been for a long time is we're both these sons of the
Yes.
Pentecostal charismatic movement,
Yes, sir.
who love it, believe in it, have the fire, the energy,
Yeah.
all like it's real. And you hear that when you
so
preach.
real. I
The
love
Holy Ghost power is real, and
Love
you're
it.
still into it.
I'm so into it, and even if it's not real, I'm still into
Yeah, no,
it.
I hear you. Like, who cares? It's still the best thing going today.
Like,
That's what we do.
Is it okay to think of our Pentecostal charismatic experience as something that was so the energy,
Yes.
the touch,
Yes.
the room full of human
Yeah.
beings
Yeah.
trying to figure out who they are, trying to figure out God,
Yes.
and I've made a choice.
Yeah.
There's that movie, what's it called? The Life of Pi.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right? It's like the story is terrible and dark, and you can see it through the tiger
Yes.
and the boat.
Yeah.
And I've made a choice, a very intentional choice, to see it through the mystical and the beauty.
Yeah.
And if it isn't that, I'm still okay with it.
Yeah. No,
But
I'm
I
with
am
you.
choosing to live my life through
Yes.
the mystery as
Yes.
opposed to the non-mystery.
Yes.
And the second thing is being back in Puerto Rico, back serving in a very marginalized community, as I'm approached by the poorest of the poor in my context. They're all like, what else do we have?
Yeah.
But to
Wow.
believe in the boat and the tiger
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
mysticism and the God that will liberate us from this crazy life that, And so I've been fortunate in a bizarre way to be rescued from atheism. And I'm sorry to say it, because I do get when people turn to not believing.
Of course.
I
Yeah, me too.
understand it. I honor it.
Sure.
I love that process. I respect that process.
Yeah.
But for me, it's been like, if I have to make a choice, I'll choose the story of hope and heaven someday and everybody being welcome at the table.
Yeah.
I sleep better
Yeah.
if I make that choice.
No, you and me both, and it's I'm so right there with you. But the fact that we occupied that kind of space for so long, where it's like, but we were, I think we felt at the margins of our respective communities.
We did.
Like that we were barely allowed to even be there.
Yeah.
because
even though we believed in all of it,
Right.
we were not
right.
part of all of it.
Like almost trying to convince spiritual fathers and mothers, like, no,
Yeah.
we still believe in you. We still
Yeah.
love you. It's
Yeah.
just that also
Yeah.
the same.
Can we not do Christian nationalism in
That's
this context?
Because the Bible that you taught me to read and the Holy Spirit you taught me to listen to is
Yeah.
screaming no. So what do we do with the fact the Holy Spirit you taught me how to listen to says, no, don't do that. You can't go there.
For me, honestly, there was Luke 4, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me. So we all believe that. The Spirit of the Sovereign is upon me. But to what? And that was the whole thing. To what? To preach good news to the poor.
Yes.
But I'm here in Raleigh, North Carolina with some of the richest people in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm preaching good news to the rich.
Yeah.
And then I have to contextualize that good news to the rich so that they feel okay.
Yeah.
And so, and I think I've shared this with you before. My most painful kind of self-awareness moment was realizing I was pastoring a Anglo-Saxon church in North Carolina, feeling like, wait, am I the reason they feel like they don't have to confront the racism? Because they could say, I have a Puerto Rican pastor.
Right.
And so I can't be a racist because I have a Puerto Rican pastor. I was talking to Malika about this. Where'd she go? I was talking to Malika about this. It's like, I felt like a white pastor, even though I am Puerto Rican. I love my name, Carlos Alberto Rodriguez Ortiz Rivera Bagambugo Padua Garcia aquí Nazario, because I've shared on this podcast before. That's my name, my identity.
Yes.
But I was playing the white supremacy game fully in the context of Christian, charismatic, Pentecostal.
Right. Right. Man.
Give me some of this.
Well, it's, that's that take it. We're having a little bourbon, which tastes like a warm sunny day anyway. This is like with the fall. It's also right. Yeah. You, to be though in that space in the same way at the same time.
Yeah.
But now, because I'm trying to think even when how many years? So when would that have been when we first met? Would that have been
2008, 17, 16, 17, around there?
We had Vince though, like in 16. So I feel like it's like
6. Yeah, that's right.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been probably more than 10 years-ish since we were first connected. Easily. So now, as we're in our mid-40s, what a strange place it is. Because we're not the young guys on the outskirts of the thing, scrapping it out.
Well,
we have kids.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Not making a big deal of that, but like there are people who have listened to some things that we've said, read some things that we said.
Yeah.
And so I love this idea of like now navigating the turn that we're in, who we are now, the different kind of questions our kids are asking.
Yeah.
Because they're not in the same place. What most fascinating thing for me about doing university chaplainship, being director of the Center for Spiritual Life at DePaul, they're not that angsty.
They're not.
They're not coming in with all this baggage. And after years of doing a lot of stuff that felt important, with people who are more or less kind of ex-evangelicals, well, they're not coming with the same questions. They're not.
They're like beyond all the conflicts that you and I are on.
Yes, that's right.
And I validate all our conflicts, right? Because we go from 9/11 to Trump. And a lot of changes in culture, in church, spirituality. There's a new generation that's like, wait, you're still talking about whether gay people should be included or not?
Yeah.
Wait, you're feeling like you're progressive because you're talking about Palestine? For them, it's like beyond.
Right.
And so there's an element where we have to be okay with the season that, God gave us to be a voice. And yet there's a whole new generation that's already on the upside of the pendulum swing.
That's right.
They're beyond anything we could say.
So what does that look like?
How can we be generous to them?
That's right. And what does that even look like? With your own kids? We were talking about this. What are the questions that they have? What are the things they're saying? How is this shifting for you?
Yeah. So I'm finding myself. So we're on this pendulum swing. Okay. I'll use tattoos as an example. We were raised Pentecostal. Tattoos were like Satan.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the pendulum was this way. A Christian leader getting a tattoo was the worst thing in the history of mankind.
Yes.
And now, can you find a youth pastor without a tattoo?
Right.
You cannot. So the pendulum, human nature goes like this. The pendulum goes like that. That's not exclusive to us. it is faster in this generation.
Yes. Yes.
And so I've been reading about the fact that generations, the pendulum used to swing slower. Oh yeah, my grandparents were slave owners, and I kind of get that, but we're not anymore.
Yeah.
So the pendulum used to go, and obviously I'm using extreme language.
Sure.
It used to go slower.
Yeah.
Now the pendulum, because of the information age, is much quicker. So we're feeling very progressive, talking about we're fully affirming.
Yeah.
I know you are.
Yeah.
I know I am.
Yeah.
My kids are like, what? Wait, you're still talking about that?
Right. No, it's not even a question.
It's not even like,
oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Like, okay. But wait, we got run out of the places that we care most of the world about. Cool.
Yeah.
Was that 100 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. And so the pendulum is swinging much quicker. And so what I'm noticing in this, so I have a 13, 12, and 11-year-old. They're seeing my wife and I, born and raised, experienced the full church. We were pastors, leaders, anointed, commissioned. Literally, I was a pastor for 18 years.
Yeah,
That was my full-time job for 18 years.
Yeah.
Together with my wife, and then we're in the process of deconstructing. My kids are already like, can we go back to church? Can we talk about God? Where did God came from? Is God male or female? Is God no gender? Can we talk about, right? And they're having these conversations. They're the ones saying, can we disconnect? Because mom and dad are like this.
Yeah.
So I get, and we understand as parents, the concern about how connected our kids are. I think the pendulum's going to swing, and I'm being hopeful now, in a way that they're like, can we be in nature?
Well,
As a response, like every generation does, they respond, they react to what their parents are doing. They react the opposite way.
Yes.
I think we're going to have a wonderful awakening of spirituality, of connecting with nature, of connecting with God. And I hope that we give them enough of the gospel of Jesus, of the ethics of Jesus, that however that manifests, we have no clue.
Right.
That is close enough to beauty and the margins and grace and kindness towards other people.
And are we going to be able?
Yeah.
Are we going to be defensive?
Yeah.
Will we be reactionary? I'm not trying to get you to play the greatest hits.
I'm going to play the greatest hits.
But because it was so profound to me, and I've carried it forever.
Yes.
The prophetic word that you got, I'll just cue it up, because now we have to start thinking like, I know that we probably have folks in our lives that might be alarmed that we are elders.
Yeah.
But we are elders.
We are.
Whether we like it or not, we're elders. No, like
there's a lot of white. There's enough
I got more white than yours.
There's enough white to say we're elders.
Yeah. So it's like, so, but if you want to say a bit about that, because I think it's so profound, even the idea of how does one even begin to anticipate what you're going to do or how you're going to respond when you get pushed in the same way.
So I'm in my mid-20s. I'm getting married. I'm in this great move of God, which back in the day, what happened in Toronto was the progressive thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's edgy.
It was edgy. Everybody's welcome. There's male, female, young, old, Catholics, Protestants.
Barking like dogs is still edgy.
We were barking like dogs. If you ever heard a story about a dude roaring like a lion, that was me.
Was that you?
Again,
it's amazing.
I can't confirm whether it was God or not.
Yeah.
But the fruit of it is I was freer.
Yeah.
And so
you can confirm you sounded like a lion.
I can confirm I felt more like myself than not.
Yeah.
And so I can honestly come to a point where maybe this was made up, but at least human beings were trying to move forward as opposed to backwards, which we're seeing so much trying to move backwards.
Right.
So much crap online about repealing women's right to vote.
Sure.
So I much prefer some movement forward, even if it's messed up. I'm okay with humans being humans. And so going back to what we were talking about, I'm leaving this movement that was very radical and charismatic and whatever. And the pastor who leads this movement, who was my spiritual father, and I can say, not just a spiritual father, I'm grateful that he was a spiritual father.
Yeah.
He said to me, He said, Carlos, one day you're going to call me and you're going to tell me about everything God is doing in your life. And I'm going to tell you that's not God. And he said to me these words, when I tell you that's not God, please keep going. Please push forward. Because every generation will always just hit a wall where they just can't see anymore. And so his invitation to me was, and I just want you guys, and Jonathan has heard this story. Maybe this is the fourth time he's heard it.
But that's actually revelatory. That is a truly revelatory thing to say.
I appreciate his self-awareness because I've had times where I haven't been that self-aware as he was. And I'm grateful for the invitation to know that, because it did happen. Eventually, he came back to me. He's like, Carlos, what you're posting, what you're saying, it can't be God. And I'm like, you told me that this would happen.
Right.
And so this is my moment to honor you as a spiritual father and say, I'm moving beyond what you're saying.
Yeah.
And now we're getting to a point because of the white where there's going to be things that even for us is going to be beyond what we're capable of understanding, we're capable of absorbing, we're capable of processing. And we have to say, you go and find God in the way that you find God.
So how are you responding when your kids are raising this way? Like, what are you saying?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because the question, the answer is hands off.
Yeah.
I have to trust the Spirit. I have to trust Earth. I have to trust what we've instilled in them.
Yeah.
Whether what we've put in them means they react against it or whether they react for it.
Yeah.
I human beings, bro. Human beings, again, 13, 12, and 11. That's the ages of my children. In 3 years, they're going to be like, they're going to do their own thing.
Yeah.
I have to trust. My main thing is ultimately, whatever you think of God, whatever you think of the world, whatever you think of politics, if you're freaking a kind human being,
right,
I win.
Yeah, oh man.
However that looks like, I win.
Yeah,
and so that's the best I can do. Show
that's
them,
beautiful.
Give them an example of like loving the earth, loving people, loving the work that we do.
Yeah,
and however they decide to manifest that.
Yeah. So for you, it feels like the expression has to be a trust, a letting go.
It has to be.
And that trust, even the wildness of the Spirit in that way.
Which is the weird thing that my pastor did to me when he said, you have to move forward from what I've given you. Yeah. And so props to him. Yeah. And listen, I don't believe 90% of what he told me anymore. Yeah. But thank you for the self-awareness. Yeah. And thank you for the permission to move beyond.
I love that. Are you excited about what you see happening with your kids in that way? Is it cool?
I am. Yeah, I am. We get them involved. So my wife and I have made a decision to at least once a month, let's go deliver. So the nonprofit, we're delivering lunches to the elderly. Because in our context in Puerto Rico, that is the most marginalized group.
Yeah. What fascinating.
So basically, okay, let's serve the poor, let's serve the least, whatever you want to call it. This is like progressive liberal Christianity. Okay, when we get to it, wait, there's actually hungry people, there's thirsty people, there's actually people that need help. How can we find the most marginalized in our context? That's been my, what do you call it? My most guiding thing. It's like, who is the most marginalized in this context? There's two of us here. Who is the most marginalized in this context? Who is the most marginalized in this context? In whatever world we're in, who is the person whose society is the least likely to love, support, help, welcome? Yeah. Find those people, serve those people. I'm fully convinced that's where God is.
And if I could just say, Carlos, part of what's so beautiful to me about what you're doing is I feel like in a weird way, so much of the way people gravitate towards thinking about folks who are, for whatever the reason, culturally, it tends to be about younger people. I find it to be really amazing. Yeah. Like to be able to say, no, actually, we care about kids who are bullied in school for whatever the reason, but in our community, it's the elderly folks who are the most forgotten. Yeah. I think that's probably true in a lot of communities.
It is probably true in a lot of communities. And I've had to intentionally turn off the pastor. And so the pastor thinks, this is what God did with my life, so I'm going to turn this into a sermon that's relevant to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I appreciate that. But when you're in a community of marginalized people who are hungry, second-class citizens like we are in Puerto Rico, and then you get into that context, you have to learn to listen. And unfortunately, I'll tell you, John, and unfortunately, in the American context, for 10 years as a pastor in Raleigh, North Carolina, I did not learn how to be a pastor. I learned how to be a businessman.
Sure.
So starting, growing, and prospering an American church in Raleigh, North Carolina was incredible training ground to how to do good business. So the Happy Givers as a nonprofit started in a really bizarre way. Number one, as a reaction to the fact that the church was too much of a business.
Yeah.
And then, in a really bizarre way, how can I use those tools that I learned in church to make money to do the work that I cared about?
Yeah.
And then we get to Puerto Rico, and I have all these ideals. This is the 10 things we're going to do in Puerto Rico. But as we're serving the people, we realize, we don't know shit about the actual need because we're assuming the whiteboard is there, and we're like, this is what we need to do. And then when you actually connect to the community, once you learn to listen, then everything changes. And so for white pastors, for leaders in America, for church leaders in Latin America, it's less learning and it's more unlearning.
Yeah.
It's more unlearning. I assume I'm wrong. I'm right. I assume I know. And now I need to learn from the community, the people that I haven't been listening to for so many years. And so we serve the elderly, not because we thought it was a great idea to serve the elderly, but because that's the population that was the most in need. And that's who Jesus called us to.
I can tell you it's not the same thing at all, but as with my many hats right now, pastoring a community of almost all elderly people in rural Indiana.
I've seen the photos.
Well, it's so
you're the youngest. You're very young
generally they're like two families with teenagers and then everybody else, and it's like it's so. The thing that you almost feel spoiled by is caring for elders in that way. The level of blessing that is, because there's this weird way. It's like then you're caring for them, but then you're also receiving this blessing that you couldn't have imagined, like a literal blessing, like it's in conferring a blessing in ways that's just like, what a cool thing to be. Yes.
They release these words. They communicate slowly.
Yeah.
They take their time.
Yeah.
Just by them taking their time, you learn.
That's right.
Like, why am I in such a rush?
Yeah.
Why am I so stressed? And so I can't tell you how many of the elderly population, like you, are pastoring them. I don't feel in the classic way of pastoring them, but I'm wiping their butts and I'm changing their toilets to be higher so they find it easier to get up. I'm fixing their homes so that they have wider doors so they can walk through in their walkers. And it's these like things that I would have never in the American church Christianity complex think about.
Yeah.
And they are the places I'm finding God the most. That's a fact.
But still, like you've always been drawn.
Yeah.
God's on the outskirts.
Yeah.
But you're still open and attentive to, where are the outskirts now?
Yes.
Where are the margins now?
The outskirts in this context?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which is so different. So whoever's listening to us, the margins in your context are very different to the margins in your context in Nepal.
That's right.
My context in Puerto Rico. So it's almost like being intentional about Matthew 25, which I think Jesus was so freaking intentional about listing the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the sick, the prisoners, the strangers, the immigrants. Like in this context, these are the 6 categories that are the least of these. Can we just be honest with ourselves? Who are the quote unquote least of these? Which almost sounds offensive.
Yeah.
But that's how society is labeling.
Yes.
And it could be in Minnesota, the Muslim people
That's
in
right.
your community. It could be in Oklahoma, the Afghan people that have come and moved here because of what's happened in the war that we started in their country, even though they weren't involved in 9/11. And we started this massive war in their country and we paid for it with our tax dollars. And so who is the most marginalized in your context? I promise you, if you learn to listen to them and serve them and learn from them, life will be different and church would be different.
I love that distinction when you say, like, it could almost sound offensive because, like, well, it's not, God's not called the least. It's like the idea is that God is saying whoever is considered the least, which is why it has to be a real question. Because if you're not awake to who is the least now in this, in my community, in my neighborhood, then, okay, so this is I love this pivot point. And I want to ask you something, but I want to, like, really set it up because I can't think of having this conversation out loud with anybody really besides Nicole. And I would love to see how you would feel it. So, like, who are the marginalized? So Palestinian Christians are most responsible for radicalizing me. When I went through my mentor, spiritual grandmother, Sister Margaret Gaines, being in that part of the world, seeing the world through her eyes, and I still believe this day, that for the world as a whole, I don't think there is a people group more marginalized than Palestinians.
There isn't a people group more marginalized than Palestinians. There's none.
Because everybody can dump their waste onto them. Yes. Everybody can project onto them.
The Arab world is doing it.
Yep.
The Christian world is doing it.
That's right.
Americans are doing it. Obviously, Israel is doing it.
And with great respect for everybody I'll just say it this way, especially being around Palestinian Christians, it's like, well, they're not Jewish, they're not Muslim. And you were talking about margins of a margin. It's like, what do you like? It's kind of like this, barely able to exist. So it's kind of like, so my affections have been so shaped for them and with them. We come to this place in history in which, and I'm comfortable using language like genocide for what's happened
because it is.
It just is.
Comfortable with it.
It is.
Pure.
For me, that's not even. It doesn't feel political. It's like it's so definitional.
Yeah, it's clarity.
It is. It is clarity. It's clarity.
What's happening in Gaza? It's a genocide.
So it's like the absolute slaughter.
Yeah,
and then, but where this continues to get rounded out in my own life is everything from. Well, one, as director of a Center for Spiritual Life, where I'm caring for Jewish and Muslim students, both of whom are on the margins in rural Indiana. You're over an hour away from a mosque or a synagogue, temple, like whatever. So, like, caring for them. And now we're in this moment that's so weird. And I need to be able to talk this out loud with somebody at all. So even what to do with, like, because I've seen this thing for so long of if you criticize anything that Israel as a nation state does, then that's somehow anti-Semitic. Now the people who say that and would cry anti-Semitism for any critique of Israel as a nation state also harbor right alongside them and literally holding hands.
Yes.
People who are card-carrying anti-Semites in every way.
It's too close.
Like in the right wing right now, it's kind of shocking. I'm like, You're actually repeating Hitler's propaganda. It makes me so afraid for my Jewish friends because it's like, oh no, it's
not good for you.
This literally kills people.
Yeah.
So then trying to find a way to talk about these things in a way that speaks to the reality of what's happening in Gaza.
Yes, sir.
In a way that doesn't threaten any of my friends. Because now people in those same, again, I hate to, it just is what it is. It is all on the right. But it's like, no, what you're saying, the way you're articulating some of these things right now is not clarity. This is endangering Jewish people. Mm-hmm. How do you navigate those tensions, especially knowing that through our traditions, geography, parts of the world, who's on the margins change?
I do believe, so I was talking about the most marginalized in all of our contexts. I do believe as humans, the most marginalized in our context right now is Palestinians in Gaza.
Yeah.
The Sudanese people, for sure.
Yes.
We've heard about it. And so how can we be intentional?
Right.
And when I say we, I'm talking about anybody with more platform than they do.
Yeah.
To speak for them. And this was the most frustrating part for me. I was in Israel, Palestine in March, April of last year, before October 7th. And so a couple of things. Number one, everybody knew something was coming. It was in the atmosphere, the tension between the IDF, Palestinians, something was going to happen. And number two, as you're faced with the reality on the ground, there's this weird thing where, and I hate to even say it publicly, but what's happened in Gaza at the cost of so many women and children has for the first time been like younger people being like, wait, what? For young Christian people to say, wait, what? Because my parents always told me I have to stand with Israel,
Right.
but there's a nation, a political entity, bombing human beings, murdering women and children in this space. Wait, let me learn about this space. Wait, what? They were prisoners of this space? And so every generation has to make a choice, as our parents did, as our grandparents did in the Second World War, as they did before that. Like, who is the most marginalized people right now? If you look at Gaza, they're the most marginalized. They're prisoners of this space that's being bombed with bombs that we're paying for. It's crazy that we're literally, our tax dollars are going to these massive things that are dropping on buildings. Just if you think about your house, the structure, the bricks, the kitchen, your bedroom, and there's things that are paid for by you and me that are dropping on them and eliminating their capacity to be there. It's not and I get it, right? Because I was there in Jerusalem in the Holocaust Museum, and I'm fully aware of how the world has been anti-Semitic. How Europe has white supremacy, has look at Jewish people and say, you don't belong, your nose is too big, and you killed Jesus. And we've used language to destroy them, to murder them, to hurt them. And number one, can I be in my heart, look at the Jewish people and say, I love you, I honor you as a Christian. Goodness gracious, Jesus, the Jewish brown man that I love, who was born in Palestine, but was a Jewish Messiah. Can I honor you and love you and support you? And yet at the same time, look at what your government is doing for the people of Gaza and say that it's evil, that it's ungodly, and that I actually have some Old Testament language from the prophets to be like, stop doing, stop abusing, and stop hurting. And I have some language from the New Testament to say, peace, we need peace.
And worth saying probably that, like, I think the number might have dipped under 30%. It's not higher than that of people in Israel who support Netanyahu. And I know, like, in our Jewish community, to a person, I've never heard anybody say, like, Netanyahu is a war criminal and a maniac. So, like, that's what I hear on the ground constantly. Is like, even for people who believe and would hold to some notion of Israel should exist as a nation state, who would say, like, but this person is a homicidal maniac, and this is not okay.
We need to be okay with the complexity of the situation. And so I'll use this as an example. I was talking to Malika about it. I went to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and I look like this. I look like a Palestinian in their context. So when I'm in Jerusalem, I look like a Palestinian. I don't look like a Jewish person. And so I'm in the Holocaust Museum. There's 18-year-olds with massive guns going through the Holocaust Museum. And we have this gentleman who is Israeli, born and raised in Jerusalem, who has this self-awareness. He knows, number one, he studied history. He's a historian, not in a TikTok way, but in an actual way. He's a historian. He studied in Jerusalem. He was born there. And he says, this is my home. I was born here. So what do I get to do? And yet at the same time, he's fully aware, well, we took this land from these people that were here, that we're welcoming to people like me in the context of Palestine as the land. And so he's taking us through this, Jono, this actually happened. He's walking us through the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. And there's these Jewish men, unfortunately, Orthodox Jews, that are getting as this close to me because they want to hear what we're saying.
Wow.
There's
That's
this
fascinating.
threatening, like, atmosphere.
Like it was intentional intimidation?
Bro, like this.
Wow.
As we're talking.
Ooh.
And it felt like they're invading my space, invading his space. And I'm talking about an Israeli man who was born in Jerusalem, who wants to be an Israeli man born in Jerusalem, but he's fully aware of how his presence means other people are not welcome. You and I don't have the solution.
Right.
We're fully aware of that.
Yeah.
And so the only clearest thing I can choose, and this is Carlos Alberto Rodriguez Soto Tijibera Pagambuco Pablo Garcia aquí en Nazario, the one thing I can choose in Israel, in the context of Israel-Palestine, who is the most marginalized? I have to choose that place.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't love my Jewish brothers and sisters. I was there in Jerusalem. I had Shabbat with them. I loved them. I honored them.
Yes.
It's part of our Christian tradition.
Yeah.
That's where Christianity was birthed out of.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that we call it Old Testament, New Testament. That's another podcast.
Sure.
But it's part of our history, our spiritual history. And yet what the Israeli government is doing right now, if I think about the most marginalized, if I think about the least of these, is women, children, and fathers in Gaza. They are the least of these in this context. I have to stand on their side.
Yeah.
That's not saying I don't love my Jewish brothers and sisters. That's not saying I don't honor them and love them. Yeah. And I want to fight against anti-Semitism in our context here.
Yeah.
Because there could be places in America where the most marginalized are the Jewish community.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
And if I'm in that
it's
context,
sort of a different conversation.
It is a different conversation. Yeah. But if I'm in that context, that's where I'm gonna That's where I'm gonna stand.
Yeah.
But in the context of what's happening around in the world right now, I have to choose the side of the Palestinian people. Not in the context of let's bomb them, let's fight, let's blood, because I do believe in the nonviolence practice that we were taught by Gandhi, MLK. I have to choose that because of Jesus.
Yeah.
But what are we going to do?
What do you say? And I'm channeling this for just a second,
please,
because I have these voices in my life, and I'm having these conversations all the time, as you are.
Yeah.
Okay, I am, and I'm not saying this pejoratively in the moment. Just sort of white, moderate Christian. I'll always call it Twitter ex-user, borderline influencer, who's now saying, like, yeah. You know, it's bad for women and children to die. Yeah. However, Hamas won't agree to the terms. Yeah. They're using people as human shields, like blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And these folks will be like, when folks say that to you, what do you say to them?
So I have an unfortunate advantage because I am a Puerto Rican, which means that I am a citizen of an American colony. Yeah. So this was the hardest part for me personally. It's not even close to being the hardest part of being in Palestine. But as a Puerto Rican, being in Palestine, I obviously connected more to the Palestinian story than the Israeli story. Because as a Puerto Rican who is a second-class citizen of the United States, are we 10 days to the election? 10 days to the election that you get to vote on, you get to vote on, you get to vote on, I don't get to vote on. So I live on a land that's an American colony, right? Yeah. So I get this passport, but I don't have full rights. I have cousins and uncles and people in my family who have been to American wars, who come back to Puerto Rico, can't vote for that president that sent them to war. So it's unfair in a sense for me to speak on this because I do come from a context that by nature, I am more inclined to understand the Palestinian situation. Sure. Because Palestinians in Israel are second-class citizens.
That's right.
I saw the places where Israelis can go and Palestinians can go. Yeah. I saw the streets where the Israelis are welcome and Palestinians are not welcome. And that's apartheid. Yeah. The apart. Right. You are apart. You get to be here. You don't get to be here. Yeah. My goodness gracious, I go through the Holocaust Museum in the most bizarre way. I get it. I hate that I get it, but I get it. Yeah. because the Jewish people were so abused, downtrodden. I mean, we know the Holocaust. It's a real thing. It's shame to anybody that would ever say that it's not a real thing in Europe. It was a real thing. And yet, how can we, and now I'm talking to Christians who are listening, how can we fall for the same traps that destroyed us?
Yeah, that's all right.
And so forgiveness is key, mercy is key, grace is key, truth-telling is key. And so you don't have the perfect solution. Jonathan doesn't have the perfect solution. I obviously don't have
claim
the
that we
perfect
do.
solution. Zero claim that we do. But truth-telling has to be the first step. And what's happening in Israel, Palestine is apartheid.
Yeah, it is.
It's genocide.
Yeah.
And it needs to stop.
Well,
and then we can move forward.
I mean, not everybody, but most people love Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
And it's so
not everybody.
They're not everybody, but a lot of people do. And it was so revelatory for me. It's like Jimmy Carter, who the journey he went on.
Yeah.
Jonathan Demme, who directed Silence of the Lambs, was directing a documentary about him when Jimmy Carter was in the process of writing the book that became Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid.
Yeah.
And as soon as he starts talking about it, it's why the documentary became a different thing.
It became a different thing.
Suddenly, everywhere he went, people jeered him, said he was anti-Semitic. There were protests, attacks, or whatever.
Yeah.
When all he was doing, because I don't think anybody would say he was not a humble person.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's listening to stories and he's telling as best as he could.
Yeah.
And the reason that became a whole different kind of story was because, it swallowed everything up simply because, but all he was doing was, as tenderly and objectively as he knew how to do, well, this is what this is. Of course it's apartheid because it's apartheid.
Yeah.
And people were so angry and so reactionary. But you could see, though, the fact that someone who had been largely at that point because of Habitat for Humanity and building houses for the poor, who wasn't even thought of anymore as so much like a Democratic icon, was like, well, he's just a humble, good, the man from Plains, like whatever. Good. But then everyone turns on him because it's like this, the power of that language was the moment you say someone's anti-Semitic, no matter what they've done, no matter who we know them to be, those words are so powerful. And I just continue to see that kind of thing happening now. People who simply are reporting what they see. Yeah. They're telling the story of real people on the ground. But folks, the moment certain words are thrown out, it's enough for them to be demonized, ostracized, all the things.
And so, because I come from a Latino context, and we're a bit more comfortable with context and with arguments and with being at the table and being different at that same table. And so my desire, even at the nonprofit, is I have people who think very differently to me. So I can speak as Carlos Rodriguez, while at the same time wearing this shirt that says Happy Givers and be in the context where people that work at the Happy Givers think completely different to me. And so how can we get back to that point where we can have legitimate disagreements, right, about what should happen in Israel, Palestine, U.S., Puerto Rico relations, Latin America, whatever context you want to think of. And yet we're all welcome.
Yeah.
Because there is no moving forward unless all are welcome at the table.
That's right.
And if I'm using the DNC, right, they're doing their big conference, Kamala Harris is coming. And so if I'm thinking of my black friends and my gay friends, I really want Kamala Harris to win.
Sure.
Legitimately want her to win.
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking about Puerto Ricans and Palestinians, it kind of doesn't matter who wins. Yeah. I hate to say it,
but domestically versus they're different conversations. I so get it. And I struggle with it all the time. It's because I see it from that side of like, well, for my friends, this is going to feel apocalyptic if this happens. But for these folks who are also my friends, it also feels like almost no difference in this entire machine, in this empire.
Yes. And so we had Hurricane Maria, and I'm going to use Puerto Rico because I'm Puerto Rican and I live in the context of Puerto Rico. Hurricane Maria came. It was destructive to our island. And you guys know President Trump was throwing paper towels at a crowd. It's disgusting. It's visceral. Even people who support him are reacting to it.
Cringy even to them.
It's cringy even to people who support him.
Mm.
Hurricane Fiona comes 2 years exact to the date. It destroys our farm at our nonprofit. We have legitimate loss at our space. President Biden comes. Wonderful in terms of optics. I honor him for the way that he was compassionate. I know that he's a compassionate man because he's had so much loss in his own life.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate the optics of it.
Yeah.
But on the ground, Jonathan, the response on the ground, dollars, money, it was the same. Trump, Hurricane Fiona, Biden, Trump, Hurricane Maria, Biden, Hurricane Fiona. It's the same. We're second-class citizens living in a second-class country that's a colony of the United States. And so I can be honest about, as a Puerto Rican man, I want what's best for my black female friends in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Means I want Harris to win.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, I can say honestly, Trump wins, Harris wins for Puerto Ricans and Palestinians is the same. It doesn't change. Can we have a disagreement on that? Of course we can. And you can say, well, Trump would do this in Israel.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to have those policy discussions.
Yeah.
But how it feels, how it looks on the ground is the same. And so it's okay for it to be a convoluted journey.
Yeah.
It's okay for not to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's okay for it to be complicated and difficult. And yet we can make choices. I'm making the choice to support President Harris. I'm so glad that a black woman who's never had children is going to be the president of the United States. I am praying to Jesus she wins. As a Christian Puerto Rican, I'm praying to the Lord Jesus she wins.
Yeah.
And yet, in my context where I live in Vega Baja, Puerto Rico, it doesn't really
It's not without complexity. It's not without nuance. And it's so beautiful that for you to say it that way, to say, this is why I choose and who I'm choosing it for.
Yeah.
But also eyes wide open.
I can't even vote for her.
Yeah.
I literally can't actually go to the polling booth as a person who has an American passport and choose the commander-in-chief. I can't.
But the mistake I feel like happens so often, and I say this, maybe it's not helpful to use specific names, but like I've been very shaped by, I so appreciate the witness more than I know how to say, people like Chris Hedges, people like Cornel West, et cetera.
Yeah.
There's a very real way that it is all empire. They are right about that. There are no lies.
There are no lies. No lies.
And yet I don't find personally there are a lot of tension to be between. That may be true.
Yeah.
But do I think anything is greater right now than the imminent threat of actual fascism? I do not. Is anything matter to me more in terms of like the lives of people on the ground than black women? I do not.
Yeah.
And see, I feel like people just aren't able to say, that may be true, but also,
it's okay.
It may all be empire, but also,
it's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. It's okay.
Yeah.
The but is okay.
That's good.
It's not perfect.
So good.
It's not clean.
Yeah.
The but is okay.
Yeah.
I am so grateful for Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, to call out white moderates, while at the same time working with white moderates.
Absolutely.
And it's dirty. It's unperfect.
Yeah.
And so I have friends in my life who are the most lovely white, liberal, progressive friends who have gone almost fundamentalist in their ways.
Sure.
It's not real in the real world. I appreciate their conviction.
Yeah.
I appreciate their passion towards justice.
Yeah.
But come to Puerto Rico, and I'll use the simplest example. So at our nonprofit, we're delivering 267 meals 3 times a week to the poorest of the poor in our community. And we do it what we call in Puerto Rico, las cajas chinas. These Chinese, we call them Chinese boxes, which are those white styrofoam, you know, those box where you get like Chinese takeout.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely terrible for the environment. I know they're terrible. You know they're terrible. You know they're terrible. It takes hundreds of years for them to decompose. And so as a nonprofit who's serving the marginalized community, we're like, we don't want to use these, but if we stop using these, that means 10 to 12 families in our community don't get food. So that we can pay for the eco-friendly ones. I promise you, brother, I really want to use the eco-friendly ones. I really want to use the ones that will decompose quicker, the ones that are healthier for the environment, so that in every video that you watch of the happy givers, you see the ones that are like, they're eco-friendly. But if I use the eco-friendly ones, I can't feed 10 to 12 families. Oof. Right?
That's real.
So I have to make a choice. Do I use the brand ones that look eco-friendly so that people online can say, good job, you're using the, or do I keep using the white ones that take 1,000 years to decompose so that I can feed 12 more families? I've made the choice, whatever we have to do, to feed the hungry. While knowing. And so it's not perfect. The equation is not as perfect as it seems on Twitter. X, whatever you call it.
And that's the thing is that, again, I said this, my sense is that when you don't, and I really don't mean this as a slur, but if you aren't walking with people in community and you don't know these stories, you have the luxury of pursuing perfect ideology. Whereas
and I get why you would do that.
Why you would? Because if
you and I would do the same.
We would. No, if I'm in the like closed, windowless, padded room trying to figure it out,
I would do the same.
It makes all kind of sense.
It makes sense.
And yet, I tell you something. What I think this is not off topic. You'll see what I mean. A couple weeks ago, and it's not a big deal, and I haven't made a big deal about it. But as I've been podcasting more and feeling this weird,
I love
urgency, just this thing I'm supposed to do.
We've missed you.
Thank you for saying that. But I did a thing on holiness, sexuality, and judgment.
I saw that.
Where I talked about LGBT, and I feel like I did this in a way in How to Survive a Shipwreck, but not quite this overtly.
Yeah.
And if there was like a punchline to all that, and it's what I need to say because, I talk about theology, I talk about scripture, whatever. But there was a very specific thing that felt like, after my life had unraveled and finding God to be more present, more merciful, all the kinds of things, there was a very real sense, and I don't know if I'd ever said it just quite this directly, I feel like the Holy Spirit kind of saying to me, it was like there was infinite patience for all of my issues and all the unresolved things and finding God, at the bottom, God to be so whatever. But there was this strong sense of paraphrasing, but it's kind of like, son, I love you. There's room for all your stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
You can't deny the witness of your friends.
Yeah.
You can't not talk about your friends. You can't not talk about the world that you've seen in them. And you don't get to not do that.
Yes.
And while it may be a kind of privilege, of course, to be able to travel, know those kinds of stories.
So,
I'm thinking about sitting in the home of Palestinian Christians and them literally saying the words, can you please go back and tell Christians in the West that we exist? Do they know? Do they know that we're here? Do they know that we're alive?
That's it.
And when you've had that experience, when you know those folks and you know their stories, I don't know how you don't tell that, which is why I think I'm becoming all the more comfortable with, the more people I get to know and the more stories I get to know on the ground, the more I'm going to tell. But what I can't do is decide to bury my head in the sand and not talk about it at all because I don't know how to talk about it perfectly.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
You can't do that. We can literally, look at this podcast 2 years from now and be like,
sure,
we got it wrong.
Yeah, sure.
The one thing we can't do is not talk about
it. That's right.
The one thing we can't do is not talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I much prefer having to go back and say, goodness gracious, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious, I missed it. Yeah. I need to correct. I need to adjust. I need to address. I much prefer having to correct than being silent.
Absolutely.
I much prefer, I missed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Please forgive me, than not actually saying something. Because that's what being a human is.
That's right. That's right.
And so if we're okay with not being perfect, and I said this yesterday as we were meeting with Malika and her team and her wonderful group of champions, which, goodness gracious, I felt almost like out of place. Like I wanted to listen to them speaking. What I said was basically this, like, at least we have clarity on where we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we're wrong. And that doesn't mean there's adjustments. That doesn't mean there's therapy that we need to get. That doesn't mean there's correction that we need to have. And Malcolm X said this, sincerity is my only credential.
Ooh, yeah.
Sincerity right now.
Yeah.
I want to be sincere about where I am right now.
Yeah.
I can be wrong. I need to adjust. I need to correct. And I'm happy to do that. But I'm going to be sincere about where I am right now. I'm going to be sincere about my condition as a Puerto Rican, as a second-class citizen of the United States of America. I live in a colony. Because I live in a colony, I connect more to the story of the Palestinian people because they are second-class citizens to the state of Israel. Yeah. And I can be sincere about that. Yeah. Can I be wrong? Of course I can. Can I miss parts of the story? Of course I can. Sure. In any way, am I hurting my Jewish friends? Of course I am. And do I want to hear from them? Of course I want to hear from them and learn from them. But what I can't do is be silent.
Yeah, that's right.
When children and women and amazing fathers are being murdered, I cannot be silent. Yeah. And so we need to speak. And so, and going back to where we started about our children, about being parents, the best thing I can do for them is to show them an example of them being sincere where they are right now.
That's right.
And I am terrified at the fact that their sincerity at some points in their life might mean that I fully disagree with them.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
But I want them to be effing sincere.
Yes. Oh,
because the truth shall set you free.
The truth will set you free. And Carlos, you saying that sends chills up my spine right now, because I think the thing that's been screaming me the last couple minutes in everything you've been saying is this idea that the pursuit of the truth is the thing that can't be abandoned. And I thought this is important because I think a lot of our folks struggle theologically with all this.
Yes.
How do I fit this in with the story of Scripture? Like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it, but I feel like it needs to be said somehow.
Yeah.
That the way of Jesus ultimately, and as a person who cares about church tradition and cares about the historical story, theologically, and all these kinds of things, ultimately, what fidelity to Jesus means to me is not fidelity to ideas about Jesus, councils, creeds, not saying they don't matter, but that's not ultimately what it's about. What is the way of Jesus if not the Word became flesh and dwelt among us? Peterson's beautiful thing, the message, the Word came in the neighborhood, like all that. What is truthfulness to Jesus if not living real life in real communities with real people and telling what you saw? Ultimately, that has to be the way of Jesus, more so than conforming to ideas about Jesus. Sure. What did Jesus do? He moved into the neighborhood. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Yes. And it's why and I actually say this with gentleness. I do want to say to folks sometimes, it's kind of like, so if you don't know folks in real communities who are living this, very politely, could you please shut the actual hell up? What do you know? Like, what do you know?
The actual hell up.
If you don't know any of these folks, then why are you talking about this?
If there's no names.
That's right.
If there's no names to the story, to the gospel, then it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's right.
And so this is officially, and I've said this to my friends, my final trip to any Christian church context in America. Because I want to
forever?
Stay. At least for the foreseeable future.
Okay, fair enough.
This is my last trip.
Wow.
Podcast, going to a church, going to a Sunday. I am so excited to say that if you want to, in any shape or form, see what we're doing, come to Puerto Rico and see it there.
Yeah.
Because in Puerto Rico, you can smell the garlic and the onion and the recao, the culantro being cooked. and you can actually see the families that are being fed, and you can actually experience the reality of Carlos Rodriguez, Catherine Roberts, my wife, and the whole team of 16 employees. We're not even close to being perfect, but we're there. But we're present.
Yeah.
And we're present for the ones who are hungry,
Yeah.
and the ones who have been abandoned, and the ones who have been marginalized. And we're still learning how to do it the right way. And we're still realizing whatever that book was, When Helping Hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
We have to be self-aware
Yes.
that we who call ourselves the helpers might actually be hurting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I effing want to learn it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to learn it in theory, as good as the theory is,
Right.
as good as the books are and the theology is on the ground to actually serve those who are the least of these. So as we were saying before, the least of these in the world context,
Right.
in the global context,
Right.
is our Palestinian brothers and sisters. People in Gaza are being bombed every single day because they're Palestinians.
Yeah.
Not because they've done anything wrong.
That's right.
Just because their skin color, their history, the thing that they called home is quote unquote wrong.
And because everybody else are not going to care about themselves. It's not going to be like, it's not like this happened in Switzerland or Sweden or something. Like this, no matter what happens to them, almost nothing could happen to them. That could be a story. Isn't that wild? It's like almost no level of violence, no level of where it would be a story worth telling because it's that like on the bottom of the shoe of the world.
Yes.
Where it just doesn't, no matter what image you say, well, that's unfortunate, but
And think about 200, 300 years from now, if we're still around, because as a Puerto Rican living in Puerto Rico, on an island that is shrinking because of the rising sea levels and the crazy storms that we're getting. But think that we make it 200, 300 years and think that people from Indiana somehow become the most marginalized. You know where the freak Carlos Alberto Rodriguez Soto Ortiz Rivera would be? In Indiana.
Yeah.
We have to choose the ones who are at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
I fully believe it as a Christian. Whoever the most marginalized is, the woman caught in the act of adultery, the 5,000 who were hungry, the one who was blind, the one who was downtrodden.
Yeah.
Jesus intentionally went to the bottom, quote unquote, of society.
That's right.
And that's the place where we find God. That's the place, not just where we find God, John, where we find purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the place where I feel the most at home.
Yeah.
It's the place that I feel most like I'm following Jesus. Then it's the place where I feel like I don't have the solutions.
Right.
I don't have all the answers. It's 100% not perfect, but I can go to bed and they can go to bed and we could be at peace. Yeah. That at least we're doing something that means something. Yeah. Not just for capital, not just for business, not just for money, but for a human. And so, we sell these shirts called People Over Profit. And people over profit, people over ministry, people over ideas, people over podcasts, people over anything else. The human comes first, especially those who are at the bottom of the list.
I know you don't need any kind of affirmation from me, and I'll honor your time, and we'll eat pizza and old things. But I really want to say, Carlos, because I think it's so important. Like, I think the many things I love about you, but I think the thing I love about you most, and that I admire about you most, and that I do, I don't embody it perfectly, but that I would most aspire to resonate with. I've seen this in your life for so long of like you have the ideas about God, you have the theology, you have the constructs, and you're smart intellectually. Like you can live in that world. But when you described,
I've never been called that.
Oh, you're so intellectual. When you're that's why you come to these great phrases about things, because you come out 30,000 feet and you're able to like put you're able to like draw the narratives and the kind of, it's so true. But I've seen consistently with you like this impulse of the way you describe where you live and the people you live with, you're talking about smells and sights and sounds and colors and what it really is.
Yeah.
And consistently choosing that, consistently choosing the smell and the sights and the sounds and the reality and the real people over the ideas, over the language, over the descriptions people use for it.
Yeah.
If that's not God, I don't know what is. Yeah. And I think it's so broad, but I do think there's a real way that is actually always the struggle, right? Is are you going to get trapped in the world of ideas and language and perfecting language? I said this the other day and I meant it, and I would say it 1,000 times over again. I've seen it from the most fundamentalist Christians, and I've seen it to the most adamant, progressive, cancel culture kind of people.
Yeah.
When folks get hogtied by getting the language right, it is inevitably a cover for we don't actually have to do anything in real life.
Yes.
What's happening in real life?
Yes.
What's happening on the ground?
Yeah.
And because if we're not doing that, who cares if we get theology right, ideology right, language right, if what we're actually doing is it connected to real people who live on the ground? Yeah. That has to be the pursuit. And that has to be where God is. That's the Word made flesh.
Yes.
God coming to dwell in the neighborhood.
Yes. If you don't know the names, if you don't actually have the Matthew, John, Peter.
Yes.
If you don't actually have, for me, Victoria, Don Hector, Doña Justina, if you don't actually have who you're pastoring with in Indiana, the names of the people you're actually, it's just a theory.
That's right.
And I can be 1,000,000,000% for the theory, but if it actually doesn't reflect in an actual human who's being loved, served, transformed, learned from, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I can appreciate it. I can agree with it, but it doesn't actually reflect in human beings. It means nothing. Yeah. Faith without works is dead.
Right. That's right.
And it's not just dead. It's dead where it's actually a stinky corpse that is uncomfortable and weird. Yeah. And why are we still doing this? Faith without works is dead. And for those who are listening, who have all the right theory, without the actual works, you stink.
Yeah.
I know this, and I can say this with sincerity because I've known my own smell of stinky, worthless, pretending, faking it, mask on. Yeah. I know what it is. I know why it's appealing.
Right.
I know why it makes money.
Sure.
I understand in a really bizarre way, and I'm sorry to say this, I get why Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson do it. Yeah. Because it makes effing money.
Of course,
a lot of money.
Simplicity does, right? Clarity really does. Makes money.
Clarity makes money. This is what I believe. This is what I'm saying. Yeah. You deal with it. Yeah. I get the money.
Yeah.
I get it. But it's not real.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually change lives.
Right.
It just feeds the algorithm.
That's right.
And if you don't get to the Don Hector, Doña Justina, Doña Victoria, Doña Milagros, it means nothing.
And and I'm trying to stop, but I just by way of reinforcement, amen. But also the way that hopefully makes it accessible to people, in the sense of, as much as social media and all of it can be so good in the way that we're exposed to stories that are outside of our own, we live.
We found each other.
We found each other way. There's so much good.
Yeah.
And yet I think the biggest danger of the whole thing is that the whole enterprise encourages a kind of armchair quarterbacking.
It does.
Where you think, I can be the arbiter of truth.
Yeah.
I can take in enough information, and based on information or images I'm seeing online exclusively, I am qualified somehow. And it's just not true.
It's not true.
It's just not true. And so long as you think that without that kind of proximity, that you're in any way authorized to make these kind of judgments.
Yeah. It's not true.
I think that's the biggest lie.
Yeah.
And we're, man, I'm trying to, I don't mean, this sounds weird.
If the proximity makes you feel better about yourself.
That's right.
You're not doing a proximity wrong.
Proximity wrong.
Right. The proximity is meant to challenge you. Wait, I missed it.
Yeah.
Wait, I didn't listen enough.
Yeah.
The proximity is actually not meant to make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
It's meant to be like cringy. Like, oh, I was pretending. I was lying.
Yeah.
We've talked about this, Malika, haven't we? The proximity lies to you.
It lies to you.
It lies to you. I'm close enough where I'm not that bad.
Right.
The proximities make you feel like,
yeah,
I need some work to be done.
Yeah.
I need to correct. I need to address. I need therapy. I need to fix. I need reparations.
Jeez.
If the proximity is not taking you to a place where you are like consciously making a choice, I'm still not there, then proximity is a tool to make you feel better and to validate something that is not godly.
Yeah. Carlos, if I could only keep one verse, they all matter, and we don't have to keep one verse. I love, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love Proverbs, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not in your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him and direct your paths. Yeah. But I feel like at this point, I can only keep one verse to keep me tethered to the ground and what's really whatever it really is. And the word became flesh and dwelt among us. I don't think there are more important words ever uttered.
Yes.
The word became flesh and dwelt among us.
Flesh.
Flesh. Reach out and touch the screen. Flesh. If it's not dwelling among us, if it's not touchable, if it's not tangible, it's not real.
It's not.
Who cares?
Who cares?
And that's so good.
Yeah.
This is awesome. One of my favorite conversations I've ever had by a factor of 1,000. Anything else you want to say? Anything you want to get out of your system?
I just want people. So this is officially my last trip.
Wow.
Like I'm making an intentional choice to not come, to not leave Puerto Rico, to come to the States, to entertain Christians, to kind of feel better about where they're at.
Wow.
And so, because I'm among friends, I can say this. Please come to where the need is.
Yeah.
Please come to where the marginalized are. Please intentionally expose yourself, not to come with, I'm here, which is white supremacy.
Right.
I have something that I can offer you, but actually I can come underneath you and learn from you. Why I love the story of the Good Samaritan, because Jesus, as the Son of God, is saying, it's not about saving the Good Samaritan.
Yeah.
It's about learning from the Samaritan.
That's right.
It's about the Samaritan being the hero, not the victim that you save.
Yeah.
And so I invite
That's
you
a word. The Samaritan being the hero, not the victim you save.
The Samaritan was the hero, not the victim.
And who gives us this story? Jesus. But it's all about Jesus. Who gives you this story in which, what does it mean? The Samaritan is the hero. Like, it's so good.
And so, both you and your wife and your children and Malika and everybody that's listening, welcome to Puerto Rico. That whole statement in Spanish, mi casa es tu casa. It's real. We're not pretending. We love welcoming people. We love having you here. Not in the colonizing way, come here and rule us, but come here and be part of how we do family. And I come to the States. I'm in America right now. I'm in Oklahoma right now.
Malika's waving that napkin.
And y'all stress about emails and notifications and texts. There is a better way to do life. There is a better way to do family. You don't have to be ruled by... right? The text and the schedule and the whatever. You can't just be present in the moment. And I say this as somebody who was in North Carolina for 10 years. That's where we met.
Yeah.
We played the game.
Sure.
We did the thing. It doesn't fucking matter.
That's right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
People over profit. Love your neighbor. It's not just a concept, it's real.
Yeah.
And I am proud of my family for choosing to live that out. I'm truly proud of us as a community, as a people, for choosing family over industry, over capitalism.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Over empire. I love it.
come and join us.
Well, in Jesus' name, we're coming. In Jesus' name, I'm bound to it. This has to happen. It's really going to happen. Talked about too long. I need it too much in my own life. Thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably. I tell you, Carlos, now I want to change this whole thing and more like make it a documentary about Carlos's final trip to America. I want to make this like the last pizza in America, the last bourbon in America, like all the
the last bourbon in America.
Yeah. So we got to do this thing up right.
Let's do rum in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. No, I'm here for it. Thank you, my friend. It's awesome. What a sweet time. And thank you for sharing your story so vulnerably in your words. It's awesome.